Okay, good morning, everybody. That's brilliant. I can see you all beginning to join us here this morning. So thank you so much for being a part of the webinar today. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. My name is Yvonne Donnelly, and I work here with Great Place to Work, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. As usual, if you can hear us okay, if you can see our holding slide here in front of you, somebody might just jump on the chat, let us know it's all working, let us know that's a kind of all working well on your side. For those of you logging in for the bi-weekly weather update, it's a grey morning here in Dublin, but it is warm, it's very tropical, so let's hope for some better weather this weekend as we head into the end of August. That's great. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks so much. Morning, Elaine. Morning, Miriam. That's brilliant. Thank you all so much for letting us know it's working. So welcome to the next installment of our Trust Insight series. We're delighted to be looking at the topic of learning and development today. And to have Yvonne Frost of Poppulo and Liz Donnelly of Oriflame joining us as part of our Great Place to Work community expert panel. We'll be jumping into the full intros later on, but absolutely delighted to have Yvonne and Liz with us here today. The session today will be run by myself and my colleague Jim Flynn is back again. And again, for those of you hoping to see Jim's danger move of filming from the car, he is actually not in the car today. So I'm just going to burst that bubble early, just for that. So the focus of these Trust Insight series webinars is really to begin or to bring you insight from what's happening right now in organizations. I know up until quite recently, we've really focused on how organizations have handled the COVID-19 crisis and what that has meant from a kind of a play-by-play point of view. And we're really pivoting the focus now to look at, okay, so while this is all going on, we're not pressing pause on the employee experience. We still have employees working every day, turning up to organizations every day. So what do various elements of that employee experience mean now, despite the fact, or even because of the fact COVID-19 is kind of a part of our new normal. So that's very much going to be the focus today. Great, I think I can see you're all with us. I see we're all ready to go. So I'm actually going to hand over to Jim. So Jim, over to you.
Thanks very much, Finia, and thank you all for joining us. And of course, a special thanks to Yvonne and Liz for taking the time today and for their willingness to share their experience and their learning. It's much appreciated. It really builds into that community of practice that's been ongoing through the Great Place to Work community. And we're very happy to have you join us. Learning development is such a broad thing to discuss that I've no doubt this is going to be one of the first of many discussions that we're going to have on the subject. It's quite challenging to put any sort of boundaries around the whole idea of learning and development. And as we were reflecting on this ourselves, I suppose a couple of things that I'd just like to throw off with. One was this particular quote, which Finney's going to put up for me there now, hopefully. And it is, "In times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists." So I think that really sort of brings to mind the importance of learning and development, both for us as individuals and for us as organizations in such a changing world. That learning and development can sometimes be the area that the investment can get cut in at times like this, and where people sort of really question that investment and the time that goes into it. But actually at times of change, it's possibly even more important than it might be under other circumstances, because there's more to be learned, there's more to adapt to, there's more to change, and dealing with a world that no longer exists is where we could find ourselves quite easily. I think the second piece which looked at was around this whole idea of how important is learning and development in terms of any organization. And also really like this quote, that a truly successful organization is a learning institution. And it goes on to say that learning resides at the core of what it is to be productive. So it's impossible for any of us to be productive, at least for any extended period of time, without having that learning, and the resilience necessary comes from that learning as well. So to put it simply, learning is a new form of labor. So again, it's great to have an opportunity to start to focus on this and to start to look at it. Some questions then that we're going to hope to walk away with, that we'll put to our two panelists today. One is, what have you learned as an organization about learning and development over the past sort of 12 months? What specifically have you changed? How are you putting this into action? And what has changed for good? And that last question is very much a broad scope to it, in that what has changed forever is one way of putting it, but also what has changed for the better. And that's looking forward to getting into that discussion. So first we're going to talk to today is we're going to talk to Yvonne Frost from Poppulo. Thank you so much for joining us, Yvonne.
Oh, delighted to be here, to Jim, Liz and Fania. Delighted to share this experience of the webinar and to gain my learnings as well, actually, from today. I'm sure it's going to be quite interesting.
So Yvonne, you started off as a designer when you joined in your career, and then you went on to be head of customer experience and employee experience in Poppulo. Poppulo, just to introduce Poppulo, Poppulo is a technology company that and I have had the pleasure of work with, and us as a team have had the pleasure of working with for 5 years now. It has expanded, been fast growing from, I think there's about 60 or 70 employees at that point when we joined, but it's been in existence much longer than that, of course. And it is now 260 employees. So Yvonne has a great sort of technical background in terms of her technical experience, but also extending that. And she's on the leadership team, she's VP of employee experience. Poppulo, the software that it produces, enables people to communicate, enables organizations to communicate internally, and deals with some of the world's leading organizations in that regard, and has a big team to ensure customer success. I think one of the things, Yvonne, that there has been over the past while is that you have really leveraged. One of the things I'd like to talk to you about is how you've leveraged the entire knowledge and experience of Poppulo into the employee experience as well, and that's also something we'd like to touch on as we go along. So Yvonne lives in Cork and has worked in Cork for quite some time. And Yvonne, talk to us about your experience over the past while and where you see that bringing you.
Sure. Thanks, Jim, for such a kind introduction. As you pointed out, I've been with Poppulo actually for quite a while. I've been with the business for 15 years. So when I started in Poppulo, I was employee number 9, and now there's 260 of us. I even have to check myself every time I throw out that 260 number, because we've been growing so rapidly, and we're going to continue on that growth path. As you're quite rightly pointing out, Jim, I started out my career as a graphic designer, and I joined Poppulo and joined their customer success function, and had that breadth of experience as we built out that function, and then had the fantastic opportunity to move across into HR. Quite a brave step in retrospect when I look back, but I have to say that my experience of customer success and the practices and that customer centricity has really stood to me, as well as the original design skills from many moons ago as I've come across into employee experience. As you also pointed out, Jim, you're spot on in regards to how we've taken that learnings and applied it even pre-COVID. But as we've all known, over the last 5 months, the whole world has been turned on its head. We would have really focused on learning and development. In a fast-growing business, it's when you're hiring and onboarding so many people, your focus can sometimes lean towards the recruitment and onboarding and leadership piece, but quite quickly it comes back and focuses on learning and development, because you can't scale a business without people, learning and growing in their role. Then looking, getting back to your question, Jim, COVID has really focused us on learning and development. And when I say that, if you look at what kind of environment COVID has created, employees are, first of all, dealing with rapid change, dealing with uncertainty. They're stressed, so you don't have all of their focus at any one time. There is no playbook or training course that could have prepared any of our leaders or anyone in any industry across the world for COVID. So instead, we're asking, and like, I suppose the demands on people are huge. So, you know, what they have learned in approach around agility, adaptability, innovation, bringing people together, kind of those core leadership skills, that is what has helped us as a business navigate the last 5 months. But also, people need to continue to learn, and we need to continue engage with learning. So that has required a huge shift in, you know, I think many of us who are responsible for the learning and development function tend to have gone broad and provided a depth of whether it's training materials or learning options to support the learning and development. And people are so time poor at the moment. You have to narrow that, and you have to get really smart and really scientific to shift that dial on learning and development, particularly through COVID. So over the last 5 months, it's been a great source of learning for me and my team, and it's really forced us to step up on the learning and development function.
So what kinds of things have you done then, Yvonne, to get more specific, to deal with the challenge of people not having such a broad, I suppose, attention span or resources to sort of pay attention to this, and to help them get the information and the support that they need at the particular time that they need it?
Sure. I think there's two pieces to that. The first thing is, I've really engaged with the experts on learning, and in our business, the experts on learning are the customer learning team in Poppulo. These are the people who have the scientific and professional approach to developing people and bringing people on learning journeys. Because they've been doing it with our customers, and our customers have been time poor, and naturally, you know, need to be enticed to be engaged with learnings. So I've really tried to tap into that knowledge, and that I've gone to the experts. Really, I've acknowledged I'm not an expert on learning, and I've gone to the experts and kindly asked them for their time and support in helping me solve some of the learning opportunities that have come from COVID. So that's one thing straight away. The second thing is myself and my team have really reached out to our employees to listen and to take that employee-centric approach. Where are they struggling? Where do they need help? What are their challenges? You know, and asking them to, you know, through listening really to understand how we can support them, but also ruthlessly prioritize. You can't solve all these problems. You can't provide all these resources. So what is the most important thing we can help you with now? So that's the two pieces. I think COVID has required that we step up in learning and development, and with that, that's why I've really gone to the experts as well, and realized that I don't know everything, and maybe my approach needs to change dramatically, and maybe I don't know what I don't know. So being humble on delivering the learning and development.
Well, I'm sorry to bust that bubble, Yvonne, because you are an expert and you have a lifelong learning experience, and the fact that you're about to complete your master's in coaching and that you're such an example of learning, you know, means that we can't really take that on board. But what specifically have the experts told you that you've spoken to along with yourself?
Yeah, so first of all, I think a lot of people are going to relate to this. We've kind of come from a place historically where, you know, we use language like training and training budgets and allocation of training, and the training was through one channel. Often we would measure the training with, you know, tracking the number of hours given to training, and, you know, compliance sheets and signs, and it was never fun, and it was an event. Training was an event. It was something we had to do, and us within the HR function, you know, if we had this volume of training hours done, and if we had resources and training paths or learning paths, we felt we were on top of it. We were there, we had it, you know. I think there's been a massive shift with that whole move to people centricity and employee experience, whereas that's not going to cut it anymore, okay? And instead of being trainers, we've moved to facilitators, and the instructional designers and learning experts in Poppulo have really coached me through that shift in mentality and approach. And what it is really is that you're not training people, you're facilitating people to learn. And training is now not an event. Training is part of how you work. And training isn't just, you know, we've kind of come from a place where it was a tick the box, but it's not just to drive retention. Training is to drive performance. Learning and development is to drive performance and engagement, but ultimately performance and performance of the business. So that is a huge shift. And actually, when I say, and thanks for your kind words, Jim, but when I say I'm not an expert, I think we all need to keep humble all the time, because what we were, you know, particularly in a business like Poppulo, where our strategy, you know, has changed over time, where we're focused on speed and speed of execution, that what got us there is not going to get us to the next part of the journey. And me, you know, as the person responsible for learning and development, I need to be really agile in our approaches. What's working, what's not working, and be ruthless. Cut it out. You know, I might have built something 2 years ago that I was really proud of at the time. Guess what? Keep it real. It's not working. Cut it. Get it gone. Start again. And you know, sometimes from HR we have this approach, as you're built, it's like building a wall. Oh, I've built those blocks, you know. It kills us to tear it back down again. Whereas if you're taking that agile approach, if you realize the world is changing as quickly as it is, and I think the last 5 months have really kind of firmed that up in our mind, you're going to have to you're going to have to be tough on yourself and your learning and development strategy all the time. So they're the things that the kind of key pieces that I've learned.
So Yvonne, if we look at our data, right, and we notice that somebody joins an organization and typically within a year and a half, their focus shifts to having more concern from an employee experience point of view about where their career is going and how it is they're developing. Mm-hmm. By comparison to 3 years ago in Poppulo, how would my experience be different as a learner now than it would have been 3 years ago?
Brilliant. Yeah. So 3 years ago, when you would have started in Poppulo, you know, you would have went through a standard onboarding, and that onboarding, you know, we'd prided ourselves at that time. You know, when I look back, you can find humor in it, but we prided ourselves in our time in having a fairly robust onboarding, and that you got to meet the right people to tell you the right story at the right time, you know, and we thought it was a really good experience. But there's a real opportunity in the first, definitely in the first, you know, month, but in the first 12 months of someone joining, there's a window to hold on to their engagement. Now, I know a lot of us think you have to make employees engaged, but employees walk in the door 100% engaged. The sum of all the poor experiences that they have in the first 6 months disengage them. So if we take the approach, we need to hold on to that engagement from the very get-go. So one thing we decided to do early on, and it's really helped us through COVID, is that we wanted to immerse them into the Poppulo experience straight away. And we wanted them to know where they fitted into the organization and how their role was going to ultimately drive the strategy. But also in that onboarding, we wanted the time they spent with people to not be kind of running through a list of things they needed to learn. Instead, we wanted the time they spent with people to be really valuable. So we built out a learning journey, which is, it must be, you know, it can be consumed, it's self-paced learning, you can consume it over a number of hours. But what it does is it fits into their physical onboarding where they're meeting with people, but it will tell them the story of Poppulo. It will hopefully pull them in so they understand how important what we're trying to do is and where they fit in that. But it's a learning journey that they can consume over time. And then that was the first learning journey for onboarding. We call it the Poppulo Bridge. But then it's the first in a number of learning journeys that can be accessed in this blended learning approach that's self-paced and is very centric to the employee experience. And then what they can do instead, you know, they can consume these learning journeys in their own time. But then the real value is that the time they spend with people. So everyone who joins the company will get to spend time with our CEO, and we get to spend time with all of the department heads, as well as, you know, within their functional areas. But those conversations are freed up to, first of all, build relationships, but also to have a depth of a conversation versus I just need to cover off all these things with you, because the learning journeys have covered off those learnurs. Sure. And there can be a real connection with the company. Then in regards to their program, yeah, go ahead, John.
For a second, Yvonne. So what I'm understanding from that is now, as opposed to 3 years ago, what I could expect is that the content will be delivered through my learning journey and through technology.
Yes.
And that frees me up to go through at my own pace in a way that suits me in terms of the content. And then the conversation that I have about meeting the right people at the right time becomes more valuable and more focused on building the relationship. Also, in terms of the content, there's a focus in terms of connecting to the strategy and where I fit within the strategy and immersing me in the Poppulo way. So those are guiding principles in terms of how the content is delivered.
Absolutely, Jim. And the piece that is different as well is traditionally we could be very focused on skills and competencies. Naturally, with a company that's growing as quickly as Poppulo, I'm interviewing people day in and day out. Nearly, you know, a huge percentage of people are highly competent and have the skills and have the knowledge, but we're stepping into a whole new world where actually it's how you do something. It's how it's aligned with our Poppulo values. So if you're communicating, it's not just to tick the box, I'm imparting some information to you. You know, you're communicating in a way that's aligned with our values, whether it's together we're better or don't just work, learn, or honesty throughout. So it means from a learning and development piece, we're able to focus on how you do something. I'm not just training you how to communicate, I'm training you to how to communicate in Poppulo.
Okay.
So, and that's the learning journeys have helped us.
And how are you measuring that then, Yvonne? Like how do you, so somebody having, let's say, gone through that learning journey and having had the conversations and the transfer into the actual work of where they're doing it the Poppulo way, how do you establish, let's say, further training needs and coaching around that?
Sure. So first of all, we have someone who is focused on onboarding employees, right? So not just, you know, sometimes I call it the concierge, so your onboarding concierge, but it's someone like that person who's the nice person who meets you in the hotel, who's there to greet you, who's there to support you, to answer any questions. And they're kind of, they'll in essence check in, get feedback, what's gone well, what hasn't, what's missing in that learning journey, how did that land with you, and also validate, you know, through questions that they're getting it, that they understand what those values mean, or what we meant by this, or what that story meant, or what our strategy is, and in a very subtle way, you know, it's not like a test, but we're making sure that people are absorbing the content and it's a good experience for them and it's getting them where they need to be. Then I suppose, and Jim, you've over the years we've talked a lot about this, when they complete that onboarding and they're off on their path, really it's the quality of leadership in the business that is going to keep them continually engaged, is going to get them hitting the ground running in regards to setting the pace of further learning, of quality of work, and of continued engagement. And we try to work through our leaders to make sure that that people are set up to succeed, and that people have a clear understanding of our values. And often when I sit with people as part of their onboarding, I'll say to them, you know, don't be surprised if I, you know, pop something in your calendar, you know, if I've, particularly for leaders, you know, if I observe something that's a little bit out of alignment with our values, you know, so I kind of preempt that in their onboarding. I said, look, over this next 3 to 4 months, we're probably going to have a conversation around something that I've observed, or, you know, in how you've navigated a task, or if there's a misalignment with our values, we get in there early, and just one of our values is honesty throughout, and we'll sit down and have a conversation about that, and this is what you could have done better, and this is where there's an opportunity for improvement there. So but that's where I suppose that whole piece of building relationships is key. So if you have that relationship, and that relationship is with trust, and they know, you know, it's a partnership where they genuinely know that I'm setting them up to succeed, and that their leaders in the business are setting them up to succeed, and that they're really valued in Poppulo, that gives you a great platform for giving that feedback and listening and pushing people on. And I suppose at the end of the day, ensuring that people are reaching their full potential.
And how important is, you know, have you found learning and development to be in terms of retaining key talent and you know, enhancing the employee experience?
Sure. I think, you know, and I know, Jim, you mentioned I'm from Cork, so we can be very proud in Cork, but that, you know, the whole piece, I'm very proud of the quality of people we have in Poppulo. And when you go out to the market and you bring in exceptional people, there's an onus and an expectation on you. So I'm responsible for the HR and learning and development function, but I need to step up, and my function needs to step up to deliver what we promise to these people. And with those top performers, they're never going to sit at the same level. You know, they're wanting to move forward all the time. That's one of the foundational elements of a top performer. And you know, we're very lucky in Poppulo to have some incredible people. So it's I found over this period, if you're not developing people, if they're not, you know, they may be developing, but they may not be able to see it themselves. But if they're not seeing their development, if they're not being challenged, you won't keep them in the business. And one piece that I've really found is that, you know, and it's interesting when you look across the business and you look at the top performers, whether they're in sales, whether they're in marketing, in customer success, in engineering, or anywhere across the business. Some of the best performers in Poppulo have been homegrown, and they've come across functions. So they've come from customer success and become an engineering manager, or they've come from customer success and been our top salesperson. So that, you know, traditionally we can be very blinkered in regards to putting people on these trajectories and that they're coming straight up in their verticals. But actually, if you take a broader view on learning and development, and if you are employee centric, you're listening to what they want and where they want to go. And then you can build them to the destination they want to go to, versus me trying to build them because I need, you know, a certain role in a particular function. You have to listen to them and understand what they aspire to. But I think learning and development from a retention, but from a performance piece and building a business is absolutely critical.
And tell me, Yvonne, asking an awkward question for a moment.
Well,
at what point, you know, when let's supposing I join Poppulo and for one reason or another, I'm not playing with the value, you know, I'm not, let's say, living through the values properly, or I'm not the right fit for the culture in Poppulo. How do you know when it's neither a coaching intervention, nor a training intervention, nor a kind of a conversation intervention? How do you know when this person is not a fit? Because let's say the assumption we can make is that, you know, training, development, support can be, I suppose, the answer to many things. And we start from asking that question, presuming that everybody can develop in the right way. But at what point would you know when you've crossed the Rubicon?
From my experience, I only know that when I've actually tried all of those things. So when I've tried the feedback, when I've tried the whether it's training, whether we've tried mentoring, whether we've tried to support the person, and basically tried everything. What I do. It's you mentioned coaching there, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. But often, if you're trying to change behaviors in people, you're usually dealing with some kind of an innate aspect of their personality. And often, for people who haven't made that transition, or people who haven't been able to adapt to our values, fundamentally they've resisted it, or they don't see. You know, I think everyone has the ability to change, but some people I'm actually perfectly fine the way I am, and actually you've unrealistic expectations of me. So usually they decide, actually, you know what, I'm going to stay right at this point here. I'm not going over there. You can tell me what's over there, but I'm not going there. And then that's the decision that they've made. But ultimately, it can be tough. It can be tough when and I know, Jim, we've talked about this, and I know when we were around 60 people, we would have partnered with you in defining our values, and it really has been incredible support as the company has scaled and transitioned. But when you make that commitment, you see, you kind of either 80% or 100% or 50% make that commitment to your values and your culture. But we made that commitment, and we said, look, this is how we're going to operate. These are our values. We're not wavering. We're not wavering on who we hire. We're not wavering how we operate. We're not wavering when I have to make tough decisions or have tough conversations, which can be uncomfortable. I could say, you know what, I'll let that slide. You know, that's, you know, but when you commit 100% to your values, it's really like a North Star. You follow it and you make those tough decisions. I think it's got us this far, and I think the rewards of that culture piece, it's not just felt by me, it's felt by everyone in the business. So it's not just, you know, the people operations function, or it's not just the leadership team who, when someone's misaligned with their values, is disappointed. There'll be uproar across the business. There'll be, you know, I'll have people knocking at my door and saying, this isn't our value, you know, that's not how we operate. Why is this being tolerated? So everyone's bought into it, and it makes it a lot easier.
Well, Yvonne, in the years that I've known you, I've absolutely can attest to that, and the humility that you bring to stuff, and that Andrew does, and the entire leadership team, and the attention you pay to all of that. I could talk to you about this for hours, and I hope we'll get you back. I'm going to hand back to Fania now, so that we can also talk to Liz. And Yvonne, I'm so thankful to you.
Thanks, Jim. Well, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Yvonne. That was fantastic. I think that idea of really kind of bringing the values to life, I think there's a lot to resonate with people. I am actually going to stop sharing here, so Liz, you can get set up. But just to give you guys a little bit of context on Liz. So Liz is a senior manager responsible for the employee experience in Oriflame. She will, I have no doubt, do a much better job than me in explaining what it is that Oriflame do. But just to break the theme a little bit, they're not based in Cork. So Oriflame are based in Bray, and they're one of the 2 R&D centres that Oriflame have across the globe. And I had a little dive into the culture audit last night, 6,000 odd employees around the world. So that gives you kind of a sense of their scale. Liz, who joined Oriflame in 2012, has kind of a really impressive career in Diageo and DHL, and then setting up her own HR consultancy business to provide services to SMEs. So really cool to see that. And she's really spearheaded Oriflame's Great Place to Work journey along with Lisa, which they started last summer. And I suppose I've had the privilege on a couple of occasions to see Liz in action, and kind of that idea of looking at that measurement piece and bringing value to the organisation through her role. The last time I saw Liz in person was actually at the Oriflame Christmas party. So Liz was dressed up in her Christmas garb. And I mean, I know it's compelling content for a Christmas party, but I was there to talk about Oriflame's results from a great place to work perspective. So I was really setting them up for a great Christmas party. But one of the things I was really impressed about the team, Liz and Oriflame as a total, was as part of that coming together at Christmas. So before the revelry began, there's this reflection on the year, and they had a number of employees stand up and talk about their year in Oriflame and what that's meant. And the couple that I got to see were really talking about Oriflame's commitment to them through that employee experience and the role that learning has played for them throughout that year. So when we were putting this topic together, it just seemed a natural fit. So Liz, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks for that introduction, Fanny. That's lovely. And we actually did have a brilliant party. Remember when we party all together? Hopefully we can do that again someday. So thanks for the opportunity to talk about this. It is a subject that I'm very passionate about for Oriflame. So I just want to give you a bit of context about who Oriflame are, first of all. So in terms of Oriflame, I'll talk about who we are, I'll talk about employee experience, what we do, and a couple of the challenges during the pandemic, but I'm not going to dwell on that too much because I think we're all COVIDed out at this stage, but I know it's important, and it has obviously shaped the learning and development journey for us as well this year in particular. There has been some changes, and this will provide its own challenges and opportunities as well for the future. So that's really my agenda today that I want to talk you through. Okay, so who are we? So we are a Swedish beauty company. The two gentlemen you see there are our founders. We were founded in 1967, and we've been growing as an organization. We're in the direct selling business, and we're now phrasing this as social selling, because it's really about selling through our brand partners across the world. So we're in 60 markets across the world. We have over 6,000 employees, as you said, and our product categories are color cosmetics, fragrances, skincare, personal hair care, and wellness, which is a nutritional food and supplements area of our business as well. So in terms of the products that we develop, and this is where the R&D is really the jewel in the crown here, we're a Swedish organization, and that really is shaping our brand in terms of Beauty by Sweden as our brand positioning. So we see beauty as a way of life. It's a holistic thing about how you are, how you express yourself, and the products that we develop are inspired by nature and powered by science, and very much trustworthy, and that's where the quality and product safety aspect of the R&D organization comes in as well. So we're really proud of the products that we produce. In terms of our corporate values, the two brothers that I mentioned there really founded these values back in the day, back in 1967, and togetherness, spirit and passion, or TSP as we like to acronym it, is been the foundation for the corporate culture, and it's really something that's certainly attracted me to the organization but retained me, and I know the same for other people. It's not just things that we put up on the wall, it's actually as you go around the lab and the offices, you see that togetherness in action. And being in cosmetic science is interesting, and it was a new area for me when I joined Oriflame, and people are really passionate about the beauty industry and really passionate about science and innovation within that. So I get to see that on a daily basis, which is great fun for me, especially as a consumer as well as an employee of Oriflame. So in terms of R&D, then I'll give you a bit of our history. The R&D organisation started, this is a house in Sandyford in the 70s, and the first Oriflame formulation was actually in the garage here. So we came a long way since then, and we had a factory which was based in Sandyford, where the Beacon Hospital is now, between 1978 and 2000, and then in 2000 we moved to Bray, and in 2008 expanded our facility for the nice building that you see there on the left. And we also set up our Skin Research Institute in Stockholm, which is our global support office. So we have the two locations at the moment, and we are expanding as well. So global footprint for R&D is now across Asia as well, because we see this as a key market. It's where a lot of the key beauty trends come from. So we're setting up an R&D satellite hub in Singapore, and we also have some R&D presence in Shanghai. But and we have it as Dublin there because globally people don't know Bray so well, although I'm trying to put Bray more on the map. I'm very proud to live in Bray. We call it Dublin there, but that's where the majority of our R&D operations are. And where are we going as an R&D organisation? I don't want to dwell too much on our strategic objectives, but I would just draw your attention to number 6 here, which is about building a strong learning organisation. We see this as a key strategic area. It's something that's engaged by the leadership group here, not just by the employee experience team, but by across Oriflame R&D leadership team, because we know that we need to build this learning organization. And I liked what Yvonne said there about training not just being a series of events, but it's about how you work. And that's really what we see as well in terms of how learning works in R&D, because it's about on-the-job learning and learning from the suppliers that come in and learning from more experienced experts that come in as well. So building that learning organization through networking with external partners, through academic collaborations for research is something that we really build on and value in the organization. So our R&D people are a clever bunch. It's interesting working with scientists. You can see the different scientific disciplines that people have studied to come into the R&D organisation, and certainly a varying degree of education levels that have been reached as well. So this is a group that have to learn. It's absolutely fundamental to what we do, and they want to continue that learning journey as they work in Oriflame. That's really, really important for people. So in terms of employee experience, I've always worked in HR, and now I'm getting used to calling it employee experience. I don't know about you, Yvonne, but it took a while to say I work in HR, and now I think it's okay to say you work in employee experience because it's become, you know, much more of a commonly known phrase now. So in terms of employee experience, we have 3 strategic areas. We look at finding the best, which is about attracting and retaining the talent for the organization. We recruit across the globe. Cosmetic science is not something that's necessarily organically ingrained into Irish universities. So although we're trying to change that, but we have to recruit across globally. And then it's about helping our people grow. So this is very much where the learning and development aspect is centered, and through performance management. And then strengthening our employee community. This is something really important for Oriflame because it's about the events that keep people connected to the corporate culture, and whether that be a coffee ducks get together or a big Christmas party, these are the events that really strengthen our community. So when COVID hit in March, obviously that was, you know, as it was for everyone, a major happening. Like all other businesses, we had to come up with a plan. And we did that. And when the lockdown happened, we saw that the essential services that were listed said that R&D could remain open. So we then had to say, okay, we thought we were going to have to shut down completely. Actually, we can stay open to an extent, but we now need to work out a plan that works to obviously secure our employees' health and well-being being at the top priority. We need to reduce the spread of the virus, so we have to be a good corporate citizen, but we need to ensure that ongoing delivery of R&D. So we actually took our organisation of 115 people in Bray and said, okay, we have a group of people that are going to need to work from home. They can do their jobs from home. Then we have a number of people that are on site that are lab-based that need to be in, but then we will rotate them on a day-on, day-off basis so that we reduce the numbers. And we're still working in that way, with the exception that the lab team, we'll be able to implement social distancing and safety measures and hygiene measures so that our lab staff can work together every day in the laboratory with just a few people in the work from home group coming back in because we've implemented those safety measures. And we had these guiding principles the whole way through the plan. We had what are Oriflame globally saying, what are our global risk team saying, and we followed a plan that's followed the government guidelines in terms of the roadmap as to how we can bring people back into the organisation. And we're just not there yet because the phase 4 has obviously been postponed. So, you know, we're still working on that, but we're still being able to stay open. And the nature of what we do means that we need to keep activity going in R&D, but we also need to consider our employees in terms of individual circumstances, like people that have working parents and people that have vulnerable conditions, and we've been looking after them as well. Okay, so from a learning and development perspective then, we have these 4 pillars that we talk about from a strategic perspective. So we have been engaging in L&D for leadership, so in terms of management courses, and we have an internal global course called the Oriflame Way, which really allows our employees, but with a specific focus on managers, to understand how to engage the corporate culture in the organisation. There is behavioural learning and development opportunities. This might be training around communication, influencing and impact, presenting. So from a scientific perspective, we put our scientists out on stage and they speak to our consultants and tell them the science stories behind the product. So it's a bit of an unusual skill set, but it's a skill set that's been developed in Oriflame because of the nature of our business. From an education perspective, we're connected with the Society of Cosmetic Scientists. They do a diploma, and we've supported some people with their degrees and master studies as well. And then obviously key is the technical learning and development. People need to stay on top of their game technically to in order to progress and be able to innovate in the organization. And this can be as anything from getting suppliers to come in and talk through different technologies and innovation, to going to conferences, picking up consumer insights, trends, and bringing them back into the organization to feed into our product pipeline. And in 2020, we had to change things up a bit. I mean, you know, we had our learning and development budget. We had some plans for the year, but, you know, with the majority of group going to work from home, we need to say, okay, what do we need to change about it this year? We had been engaging with LinkedIn Learning anyway, so we did increase the number of LinkedIn licenses. People could do that learning from home. I'll talk about the career framework launch and what that's meant. And we introduced a mentoring program for R&D and looked at a managing teams remotely course as well. So I'll touch on each of these now. The LinkedIn Learning, we've got 50 licenses available. Lots of people have taken it up, and there are loads and loads of courses to choose from. So I'd really recommend this, because it's something that can be obviously accessed from home and accessed anywhere. And there are some specific R&D courses in this as well, which has been interesting for people. So this has been really well received. I suppose the flip side of it is sometimes people saying, look, I'm working from home all day, I don't have time to do LinkedIn Learning courses, I've actually got a really busy job and I'm working back to back. So you have to be able to balance that, I suppose. We introduced our Oriflame career framework, and our people managers are testing this at the moment. And this is something that's been key, especially when we did the Great Place to Work survey. And understanding the career path in Oriflame has been really something that people want to engage in. They didn't feel like they understood, how do I develop in the organisation? And one thing that I picked up, I don't know whether it was in a Great Place to Work webinar or some, I picked this up somewhere, but I really like this idea that career paths are not just about ladders. It's not just about climbing the ladder. It's about developing a portfolio of experiences. So you can still develop in the role that you're doing without having to say, when's my next promotion? When's my next promotion? Although obviously promotions are still important. So we've taken these 4 capability areas, scientific areas, how you deliver, the people leadership, topic leadership for expertise. And we've said for each level in the organization, we've defined, what does this capability area mean? What's the expectation of you? What do you need to work towards? And where are you in it? What is your proficiency? So whether you're a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and then you understand how you get to the next scale. So this is something that we're just working in the initial stages of at the moment, but it was really something that was driven from the feedback that we got from our employees in the Great Place to Work survey. So something that we're excited to continue on. We've also launched a pilot mentoring program, and you know, the COVID situation, people working from home, it would have been okay. It would have been easy to say, okay, let's postpone this, but that wasn't what we wanted to do. We said, let's try this out. Let's match internally experienced people with people that are looking for certain experiences to learn from, whether it be from a leadership, people management, whether it's technically, or whether it's understanding the Oriflame business better. And we matched those up, and we've given training to the mentors and training to the mentees about how to manage that program. So the mentoring program, again, was something we got feedback about, people saying that a way of learning is not just attending those learning courses and training courses, it's about learning from people in the organization. What's the point of hiring all the experts if we don't give them these channels to actually be able to share this knowledge with the other employees? So that's the mentoring program's basis. And we engage with IBEC training. We've used them quite a lot, and I'm happy to give Margaret McCormick a bit of a plug here. She's been excellent as a trainer that's come into Oriflame and really understood our business. And this was not something that was on our radar pre-COVID, but we implemented this because we had a number of people managers, some who were quite junior, saying, we have no experience. Like Yvonne said, there's no template for this. It's like no one had any experience of knowing how to manage teams remotely. So we wanted to give some tools to our people managers, who have probably been the most impacted in terms of this, because a lot of them are managing teams that are on site while they themselves might be working from home, or they're managing teams that are all working remotely with different levels of experience in those teams. And so we wanted to give them some tools to be able to support them to do that. So the agenda for this course was around focusing on the task. So when the COVID crisis hit, we said, okay, our key thing here is keep new product development going. As an R&D organization, we've got to keep those products flowing in the pipeline. So this makes you really go to prioritization, what needs to be done. So we need our people managers to see how do they change their way of working to focus on the task. And this is where you're a little bit reactive, but you needed to be that way initially. Then it's about focusing on the team. How do you motivate the team to get the job done? You know, this is something that's really hard to do, and we've seen motivation levels increase and dip depending on how stressed people feel, and really starting to acknowledging the mental health impact of the last few months has had as well. And then focusing on the individual, the power of the one-to-ones, keeping those one-to-ones going, and keeping those check-ins between managers and employees, and not just about, okay, task, project, where are we at? But actually taking the time to check in and say, how are you doing? Is there any support you need? Is there anything that you're struggling with? And sort of developing that skill set as well. And then focusing on the self is really what I just referenced to in terms of that, focusing on mental health as well. So we have a team of people called the Happy Healthy Humans in Oriflame R&D who are creating those events that strengthen our community. We had a digital team building event that we did, which was really successful. We've done different smaller get-togethers where people can have socially distanced events, like going for a walk in the Wicklow Hills, and different things, that opportunities for people to get brought together that are not just about work, and that's been really key as well. So I suppose in terms of challenges and opportunities, one of the questions you asked, Jim, was, you know, what has changed for good? And we had invested some of our training budget around you know, agile training and Scrum Masterclass, and never was there more of a time to actually just put this into practice, where everybody became suddenly the adaptability and the ability to work in an agile way, because you're just forced into doing it. So that skill set has actually just improved exponentially in this time, and building resilience, coping with change, leadership, having a focus on the CSR aspect, the corporate social responsibility, because we, for example, developed some hand creams for the health service executives. So not just about hand sanitizers, but hand care, and that, you know, and being able to innovate, those skill sets have really come along. And it does present challenges, because learning and development in R&D needs to be quite face-to-face. We need suppliers and consultants to come in and demo how to formulate products, how to develop innovations. And without the ability to have more people on site, that's a challenge for us. And also continuing on that momentum of working from home and the uncertainty around when people can come back into the office, that's something we're having to really deal with as a challenge right now. But I have to say that the Oriflame culture is something that has never been more prevalent, and the pride in the organization has never been higher, I would say. And I just, my last slide is just, this makes it all worthwhile for me. This is some feedback we got from one of our managers who, you know, just, it sent this thank you email, and it was to me and my team as well. And they were saying that they, you know, ability for feeling safe and having fun and being developed. And this just, for me, was like, okay, this is all worthwhile. And yeah. That's brilliant. So thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you, Liz. I suppose just kind of a couple of key things for me that really stuck out from that is the fact that learning development, it's a strategic pillar across so many elements of the Oriflame business. So there's the kind of the overall strategic direction of the business, but then also in that employee experience, and it seems to have a home in many of those strategic pillars. So really great to see that. I think we've talked about this before, but this idea of, you do have a highly technical bunch, right? You know, with people with, you know, more than degrees and all the rest, and that kind of balancing that very technical expertise, but having your 4 key pillars and making sure you're broadening out that learning piece as well. But also, and I know we talked about this when we came into the results, it's, you have this huge amount of internal expertise. So how do we unlock that? But then also, how do we make sure that people know what those lateral opportunities are, and it's not just that vertical piece, and where those opportunities exist within Oriflame. And I'd say just on that last kind of piece, you know, thanking you. Like I said at the start, I've seen you in action. It's no surprise to me that people have felt supported and safe kind of under your guidance through the whole piece. I do have, and it's actually a question has come in for the floor, and I think it's a good kind of wider question. So Heather has asked how you're measuring the effectiveness of LinkedIn Learning, and I suppose I would expand that question out to say, you know, what does measuring effectiveness in your learning and development piece look like at the moment in Oriflame?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I suppose it's just from getting feedback in terms of the LinkedIn learning. Some people found that they got a license and didn't have the time to use it, and other people have found it really effective. So for us, it was just really about feedback, no sort of clever formulas or yeah, nothing more than that really.
Yeah, okay, so keeping that live feedback coming. Sorry, Jim, I can see you there.
I'm going to ask a question there. So this is both to Yvonne and Liz. And if we take that sort of typical formula that 70% of learning is on the job, given all that has changed, how is that going for you now, and how do you know? So if 70% of the whole experience of learning is on the job, how are you tracking that now, or is there a way of tracking that now given all that has changed?
Yeah, I mean, on the job learning is absolutely key, because when, you know, we have graduates coming in, we have interns coming in, they get buddied up with people, and you know, you have to be able to see it, especially when it comes to developing a formula for a product. You have to see that in action, and it's only when the chemists can grow themselves and start working on more complicated formulations that I guess that's how you're measuring how that they've understood that knowledge. And again, I suppose with our regulatory roles and the office-based roles, it's, you know, understanding the Oriflame markets is a very complex regulatory landscape. So you have to be able to work in it and learn on the job to be able to support those markets.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, Jim, there's probably two parts to that, as I probably mentioned previously. With that on the job learning, you're going to have to rely on the leaders in the business to assess that individuals are moving forward. So having a direct line with the leaders and what's happening within their teams. But a second piece, and I know with the path Poppulo's on it may be clearer, I suppose, but anything we do around learning and development should support whether it's an initiative or a strategic initiative or focus, and ultimately how that strategic initiative is moving forward will measure how effective the learning and development will be. So just for an example, one of our focuses over the next 12 months is moving our on-prem to the cloud. Okay, so moving to AWS. So that's a real focus for learning and development, to get the teams right across the business ready for that move. And so I would be able to see how that initiative is progressing, where the knowledge gaps are, and ultimately, if those teams are prepared, I know that my strategy for learning and development has worked. That's just as an example, how it's really helpful to understand what dial we're trying to shift, and what the learning and development needs to do to shift that dial. So okay. I find that helpful for on the job learning.
So really then it's a strategic view of learning and development as an enabler to deliver on strategic goals of the organization. And that's how it goes full circle.
That's it. And as I mentioned earlier, I work quite closely with our learning and development, our customer learning and development team. And John English, who I'll give a shout out to, he's kept me very focused in the fact that he'll say to me, okay, so you want to focus on a particular area. Let's just say it's leadership development. And he'll say, he'll try and coach me through it. And he'll say, what are your learning outcomes? And I'll maybe waffle on a little bit. And he's like, no, but what are your outcomes? And I'll waffle on a bit more. No, really, what are the outcomes? And because if once you know the outcomes, you can measure them. Mm-hmm. But if you go too broad in the outcomes, or if it's too theoretical or abstract, you'll find it very hard. But I think that's probably a great starting point for learning and development, is to really be hard on yourself and be tough on the functional heads. If there's a learning and development need, can you articulate the 2 or 3 learning outcomes you're going to need for this? And then how are we going to measure that? And you'll find by doing that, and it can be tough because you're changing your approach. You see, I think in learning and development, we've gone from that spray hose approach where we just spray everything at the wall and hopefully some of it will stick. But you can't really measure it when you do it that way, whereas you need to be kind of very, very targeted. So I think it starts with whoever's, deciding what we're going to focus on from learning and development, and then that will help you measure And it's tough. It's quite tough.
I was going to say, Yvonne, if you crack the outcome piece, will you let us know? If you crack how to form like the perfect outcome, I'd love to.
Probably John English will who works so closely with me, will force me to crack it. He won't go easy on me anyway until I do so.
We might follow on with another webinar specifically on that, because there's a great taxonomy which people can use, which is quite challenging actually to put into practice, but it is very helpful in terms of structuring learning outcomes. And that might be something we could get into deeper. Maybe with John would join us or whatever.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, I'm sure.
I just like to say, huge thank you to you both, and obviously to the team in Great Place to Work as well, and to everybody who joined us. But both of you are clearly such examples of learning and development yourselves. And Yvonne, knowing you a little bit better, I'd have to say, the humility that you bring, just the flip side of that is it delivers such an openness to learning, and I'm humbled by that myself. So I'm very thankful for that. Finia?
Yeah, no, thank you, Liz, thank you, Yvonne. There's actually a message in from SEPTA, which I think sums it up really well. So 2 very different presentations, but both excellent. So I think that's actually a lovely way to sum up today. So thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Jim. And thank everybody who joined us today. And hopefully we'll see you all again soon. So that's great. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.